What could drive someone to destroy a cherished memory in front of a crowd? And what price would they pay for it? In the quiet suburb of Willow Creek, where manicured lawns and polite smiles hid simmering tensions, a single act of defiance would unravel a community's fragile harmony. Amelia Harper stood at the edge of the HOA's annual summer gala, her fingers clutching the stem of a wine glass so tightly it might snap. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and barbecue, but her eyes were fixed on the centerpiece of the event. A framed portrait, weathered and yellowed, of an elderly couple in a tender embrace. It was her grandfather's war wedding portrait, a relic from 1944, when he and her grandmother, barely 20, had married before he shipped off to the Pacific. The portrait had hung in her family's living room for decades, a silent testament to love that endured war and time. Now, it was the HOA's historical exhibit, displayed like a trophy in the community center. Amelia's heart churned with resentment. The HOA, led by the iron-fisted Karen Whitmore, had demanded the portrait for the gala, claiming it was a community treasure. Amelia's protests were brushed off. Karen's word was law in Willow Creek. Karen, with her perfectly coiffed hair and a smile that never reached her eyes, ruled the neighborhood with an unrelenting grip. She enforced rules with zeal. No unapproved mailbox colors, no lawn ornaments, no deviations from her vision of suburban perfection. To Amelia, the portrait wasn't just a photo. It was her grandfather's whispered stories of love letters sent from foxholes, of a promise kept through years of uncertainty. Karen had no right to it. As the gala buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses, Amelia's gaze darted to Karen, who was holding court near the portrait, gesturing animatedly to a crowd of admirers. "This," Karen declared, her voice carrying over the hum of conversation, "is what makes Willow Creek special, our history, our values." Amelia's stomach twisted. Karen hadn't even known her grandfather, hadn't sat by his bedside as he recounted his war stories with a trembling voice. The audacity of her claiming his legacy as her own ignited something raw in Amelia. She didn't plan it, not consciously, but as she crossed the room, her heels clicking against the polished floor, a reckless energy surged through her. The crowd parted, sensing something amiss. Karen turned, her smile faltering as Amelia reached the portrait. In one fluid motion, fueled by years of pent-up frustration, Amelia grabbed the frame and tore it from the wall. The room gasped as she ripped the canvas, the sound of tearing fabric slicing through the silence. The portrait fell in tattered pieces to the floor, her grandparents' faces split apart. "You don't get to own this," Amelia shouted, her voice shaking with fury. Karen's face went white, then red, her mouth opening in a silent scream. The crowd erupted in murmurs, some horrified, others secretly thrilled. Amelia stood over the wreckage, chest heaving, the weight of her actions settling like ash. The fallout was swift. Karen, ever the opportunist, spun the incident into a scandal. By morning, the HOA had convened an emergency meeting. Amelia was summoned to the community center, now stripped of its festive decorations. Karen presided, her voice dripping with righteous indignation. "This was vandalism," she declared, "a deliberate attack on our community's heritage." Amelia tried to explain her grandfather's memory, the violation of having his portrait taken, but her words were drowned out by Karen's allies, a chorus of nodding heads and pursed lips. The punishment was severe, a $7,500 fine for damaging community property, and a lifetime ban from HOA events. Amelia's pleas fell on deaf ears. She was branded a pariah, her name whispered with disdain at book clubs and garden parties. But the real sting came from within. As she sat alone in her house, surrounded by her grandfather's old medals and faded letters, guilt gnawed at her. Had she honored his memory, or had she desecrated it? Enter Marcus, a quiet widower who lived 3 houses down. He was an unlikely figure in this drama, a retired librarian who rarely spoke at HOA meetings and kept his lawn just unkempt enough to annoy Karen. Marcus had been at the gala, standing in the shadows, watching the chaos unfold. Unlike the others, he didn't judge Amelia. Instead, he knocked on her door the next day, holding a small wooden box. "I saw what happened," he said softly, his eyes kind but guarded. "I think you need to see this." Inside the box was a photograph, a candid shot of Amelia's grandparents, taken the same day as the portrait. They were laughing, her grandfather's arm slung around her grandmother's waist. The wore a distant shadow in their joy. Marcus explained that he'd found it in an old album at the library, part of a donation from Amelia's family years ago. "I thought you should have it," he said. "Karen doesn't own their story. You do." The photograph was a lifeline, a reminder that her grandparents' love wasn't confined to a single canvas. But it also deepened Amelia's regret. Marcus's quiet act of kindness shifted her perspective, revealing the collateral damage of her outburst. She hadn't just defied Karen. She'd given her the power to rewrite the narrative, to cast Amelia as the villain and herself as the victim. Weeks passed, and the neighborhood's whispers grew louder. Karen milked the incident for sympathy, rallying support for stricter HOA rules. Amelia, meanwhile, wrestled with her next move. She could fight the fine, appeal to the board, but the legal fees would bury her. Or she could leave Willow Creek, escape the suffocating judgment. But running felt like betraying her grandfather's memory, abandoning the home where his stories still lingered. Then came the twist no one saw coming. At the next HOA meeting, Marcus stood up. The room fell silent. He never spoke at these gatherings. In a steady voice, he revealed that he'd been researching the HOA's bylaws. The portrait, he argued, was never formally donated to the HOA. It was Amelia's personal property, loaned for the gala. Karen's claim of community heritage was a lie, and the fine was baseless. He produced documents, old emails between Amelia's mother and the HOA proving the portrait's ownership. The crowd stirred, uneasy. Karen's face twisted in panic as Marcus continued, his voice growing firmer. "This isn't about rules," he said. "It's about power, and we've let one person hold it for too long." The room erupted. Some defended Karen, others demanded answers. For the first time, cracks appeared in her reign. Amelia watched, stunned, as Marcus, the unassuming librarian, became an unexpected ally, turning the tide with quiet courage. But the victory was bittersweet. The HOA rescinded the fine, citing procedural errors. But the ban stood, a compromise to appease Karen's loyalists. And the portrait, now destroyed, could never be restored. Amelia met Marcus at the library the next day, the photograph he'd given her tucked in her bag. "Why did you do it?" she asked. Marcus shrugged, a sad smile on his lips. "I lost someone too," he said. "My wife. I know what it's like to fight for a memory." His words hung heavy, a reminder that everyone in Willow Creek carried their own wounds, hidden beneath the surface of suburban perfection. As months passed, Amelia rebuilt her life in the shadows of the neighborhood. She framed Marcus's photograph and hung it in her living room, a quieter tribute to her grandparents. But the loss of the original portrait lingered like a bruise. She'd acted out of love, out of rage, but the cost was more than money or status. It was the peace of her grandparents she could never reclaim. Karen, meanwhile, clung to her power, but her grip was weaker, her authority questioned. The neighborhood was changing, slowly, imperfectly, but the scars of that night remained. Amelia stood at her window one evening, watching the sun set over Willow Creek. The jasmine still bloomed, the lawns still gleamed, but something had shifted. She'd lost something irreplaceable, but she'd also found something new. A spark of defiance, a flicker of hope. Maybe that was enough. Maybe it had to be. ND.